There's a house on the edge of Hollow Creek, a crooked Victorian structure swallowed by vines and shadows. For years, locals whispered about the place, claiming it was cursed, that it whispers at night. Most dismissed it as legend. But for Sarah Blake, a curious college student with a passion for urban legends, it was an invitation. She arrived one rainy afternoon, camera in hand, intending to record her exploration for her small YouTube channel. The door was surprisingly unlocked. It creaked open, revealing a hallway cloaked in dust and cobwebs. Her flashlight flickered as she stepped inside. "Just an old house," she whispered to herself. The floorboards groaned beneath her boots. The smell of mildew and rot filled the air. As she moved through the rooms, she began narrating for her viewers. "This house belonged to the Wexler family," she explained, "who vanished in 1954 without a trace. Neighbors reported hearing whispers the night they disappeared. Since then, every tenant who stayed here either vanished or went insane." Suddenly, a cold breeze swept past her, though none of the windows were open. "Did you hear that?" she said, pointing her camera toward the staircase. Silence, but then a whisper, faint, indistinct, like a child murmuring just out of earshot. Sarah froze. "Hello?" she called. Nothing. She climbed the staircase, each step creaking under her weight. The second floor was darker, colder. Doors lined the hallway, most shut, except one at the end, slightly ajar. As she approached it, the whispering grew louder, still unintelligible, but insistent. Her heart pounded. She pushed the door open. Inside was a child's room, untouched by time. A dusty crib stood in one corner, and hand-painted stars still glowed faintly on the ceiling. Her flashlight settled on the wall. It was covered in scribbled words, over and over, the same phrase, "Don't listen to them." Suddenly her flashlight died, total darkness. Then, the door slammed shut behind her. She screamed, fumbling with the light. When it flickered back on, she wasn't alone. A figure stood in the corner, a small child, eyes hollow, skin pale. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out. Sarah backed away. "Who? What are you?" The child pointed to the wall. The writing was changing, new words forming in blood-red script. "Now you're one of us." The whispers erupted in her mind, loud and incomprehensible. She clutched her head, dropping the camera. The last thing it recorded was her screaming as the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. The next morning, police were called to Hollow Creek after locals heard the screams. Inside, they found her camera lying on the floor. Of Sarah, there was no sign. But when they played the footage, they heard something chilling. Whispers, thousands of them, saying her name over and over. And in the final seconds of the video, a faint voice, hers, whispered, "Don't come here." It was supposed to be a fresh start. After a nasty breakup and the death of his father, James Rivers needed somewhere quiet, somewhere far from the city. When he found the old cabin in Black Hollow, nestled deep in the Appalachian woods, it felt like the universe had thrown him a lifeline. It was cheap, isolated, and fully furnished. Too good to be true? Maybe. But James didn't care. The real estate agent handed him the keys with an odd smile. "You'll be the first to stay there in years," she said. "People say the place has personality." James didn't ask what she meant. He didn't care. The place was his now. The first few days were peaceful. The silence of the woods wrapped around him like a blanket. No cars, no city noise, just the whisper of wind and the chirp of crickets, until the knocking started. It came at night. Soft knocks against the walls, usually in threes. Tap, tap, tap. Always after midnight. At first, James blamed the wind, or maybe animals outside. But then it came from inside, from the locked room at the end of the hallway. The room had no key. James had tried opening it when he first arrived, but the doorknob wouldn't budge, and it felt ice-cold to the touch. He assumed it was just a storage room, until the knocking came from within it. One night, James had had enough. Armed with a crowbar, he pried the door open. The room was pitch black, the air inside heavy and cold like a cellar. As his eyes adjusted, he saw nothing. No furniture, no windows, just four walls and a wooden floor. But the floor was wrong. There were dozens of gouges and scratches, as if something or someone had been clawing at it from inside. Long, deep grooves, some stained dark, almost black. James backed out slowly and closed the door. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he nailed it shut. But that night, the knocking came again. This time, it was louder, angry. The walls shook with each knock. Then came the whispering. At first, James thought it was in his head, but it wasn't. The voices came from the walls, the ceilings, sometimes from under the floor, whispering in languages he didn't understand. Sometimes it sounded like his name. James. He stopped going outside. He stopped eating. He barely slept. The forest around the cabin grew darker, like it was closing in on him. Trees seemed to shift positions overnight. Animal tracks circled the house, but he never saw what made them. And then came the dreams. Every night, James would wake up gasping, covered in sweat. He dreamed of the room, of being trapped inside it, of hands clawing at the door, of eyes watching him from the corners. One night, he dreamed of his father, standing in the room whispering, "It's hungry." James tried to leave the cabin the next morning, but his car wouldn't start. His phone had no signal. The forest trail that led back to the main road seemed different, twisted, wrong, like it didn't want him to leave. Then came the screaming. It started just after midnight. Loud, desperate screams coming from the locked room. A woman's voice, begging for help, crying, then laughing. James snapped. He grabbed a hammer and tore down the boards over the door. He flung it open, screaming, "What do you want from me?" The room was empty. But now, it wasn't just a room. There was a staircase leading down, a spiral staircase that hadn't been there before. James stood at the top, heart pounding. Cold air rose from below. The air smelled of earth, decay, and something else, something ancient. He should have run, but something pulled him forward, a whisper in the back of his mind, telling him he needed to know the truth. He descended. The staircase went on forever, winding deeper and deeper into the earth. The walls turned from wood to stone, then to something else, slick and pulsing, like flesh. He finally reached the bottom. There was a chamber, circular, lit by torches that burned with blue flames. In the center stood a pedestal, on it a mirror. But the mirror didn't show his reflection. It showed the room, the cabin, himself, standing in it. Only he wasn't alone. Behind him, a tall figure, thin, pale. Its face was a void, no eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, blank surface. James turned to run, but the chamber was gone. The stairs were gone, just blackness. Then the voice came. "You opened the door. Now you must feed me." The figure stepped out of the mirror, and James screamed. The next morning, the cabin sat quietly in the forest. The door to the room was closed again. No sign of struggle, no trace of James. Just 3 knocks, waiting for the next visitor. I never believed in family curses. Until I moved into the house my grandfather left me. It was a crumbling Victorian mansion, isolated on a hill near the edge of a forgotten town. My friends called it a fixer-upper. I called it a financial escape, rent-free living while I wrote my novel. That was the plan. The first oddity was the birds. They wouldn't come near the house, not a chirp, not a flutter. The trees stood lifeless. I should have left when I noticed that. I didn't. The second was the whistling. It started the first night. A soft, low tune, drifting through the vents. Slow, like someone wandering the halls, aimless and bored. I paused my typing and listened. It wasn't the wind. It was deliberate. 3 notes repeated again and again. I got up, searched the house, checked the windows. Nothing, just silence. Then it came again, the next night, and the next. Always around 2:30 a.m. Same melody, same rhythm. I called the heating guy, thinking maybe it was just air in the ducts. He checked everything and said, "No way this sound's coming from your system. This place is dead quiet. Too quiet, honestly." That night, I recorded it. At 2:31 a.m., the whistle returned. I froze as it grew louder, closer, as though someone was walking past my room. But there were no footsteps, just the whistle. I pressed record on my phone and dared to open the door. The hallway was empty. No breeze, no shadow. But the whistling came from the walls now, inside them. I played the recording back in the morning. The whistle was there, but faint, like it was hiding behind a layer of static. I posted it online. Most said it was fake. One comment stood out. "It's the same pattern. He still walks. Block the walls, or it'll find you." I ignored it. Internet weirdos. By the end of the week, the whistling changed. It sped up, sharper and more frantic. I couldn't sleep. I began seeing things. Shadows moving behind mirrors. Reflections that didn't match my movements. The worst was in the bathroom. I stared into the mirror and, for just a second, saw a figure standing behind me. Tall, gaunt, with a face like melted wax, and its lips were puckered, whistling. I spun around. No one. The room was empty. I stopped sleeping. I started researching. There was no mention of a curse in my family, no documented tragedies. But I did find something buried in local folklore. A tale of a creature they called the Whistler, a presence that lived in old homes, hiding in walls, mimicking songs and feeding on attention. It always started with the tune. If you heard it, it was testing you. If you followed it, it fed. If you ignored it, it got angry. I tried ignoring it. That night, I wore earplugs, put on white noise, took sleeping pills. And at 2:33 a.m., I woke up anyway. The room was freezing. My breath fogged the air. My phone had turned itself on, camera app open, filming the ceiling, and the whistling was inside the room now. Not outside, not in the vents, inside. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the phone. The whistling stopped. Then I heard something worse. The sound of long nails dragging across the wall behind me. I ran. Out of the room, down the stairs, straight into my car. I didn't pack. I didn't turn off the lights. I drove and didn't look back until the house was gone behind the trees. I slept in a motel. The next morning, I called a priest. He came, an old man with tired eyes, and I expected a laugh. Instead, he listened. When I mentioned the whistler, his face drained of color. "We call it il sussurro in the old country," he said. "The whisperer. But whistling, whispering, it's all breath. It needs air to move. That's why it lives in walls. It waits for listeners." "What do I do?" He looked at me grimly. "Seal every vent, every crack. Don't let it breathe through your home. If you do, it'll go quiet, but it won't leave. It waits." I returned, armed with caulk, foam, and determination. I sealed everything, vents, outlets, even baseboard gaps. For 2 nights, silence. Then, on the 3rd night, I heard it again. But not from the walls. From inside the room. The whistle was soft, hesitant. Then, it became a song, a melody I remembered from childhood. My grandfather used to hum it when he carved in his basement workshop. I froze. I had never whistled it aloud. No one knew that song, except him. I followed the sound downstairs. The door to the basement creaked open on its own. Darkness waited at the bottom, and the tune floated up to greet me. I held my phone like a flashlight and descended. The smell hit first: rotted wood, damp air, mold. But underneath it was something worse. Something old, like forgotten breath. The basement was empty, except for the workbench. On it sat a wooden box I'd never seen before. Ornate, carved with the same three-note pattern burned into its sides. My hand moved on its own. As I opened it, the whistling stopped. Inside, teeth. Human, worn down, filed to points. A tongue, dried, curled like a dead leaf, and a slip of parchment stained and brittle. It read, "To pass the song on is to silence your own breath. Speak it, and you feed him. Listen, and you become him." My phone turned off. Then, behind me, the soft inhale of breath. Too close. Too real. I turned, and he was there. Not my grandfather, but the thing that wore him. Mouth twisted in a silent tune, eyes black and hollow. His jaw opened wider than it should have, and he whistled.